Have you ever wondered why, despite your deepest intentions and your most sincere efforts, real change often feels so incredibly difficult to grasp, almost as if there is an invisible rubber band pulling you back to where you started? It is a question that keeps many of us up at night, wondering if we simply lack the willpower or the strength to become the person we wish to be. And today I would like to invite you to sit with me for a while so we can explore that feeling together, not with judgment, but with a sense of gentle curiosity and hope. Hello, and welcome to this quiet space where we can pause the rush of the world and look inward, not to criticize ourselves for the habits we haven't broken, but to understand the beautiful, complex machinery that makes us who we are. There is a profound relief waiting for us when we realize that the struggle to change is not usually a flaw in our character, but rather a natural function of how our minds are built to protect and preserve us. In fact, many people find that the moment they stop fighting against their own nature and start understanding how it actually works, the heavy burden of trying harder begins to lift, replaced by a softer, more sustainable approach. As we talk today, we are going to explore a concept that sounds technical but is actually deeply human, a concept often called neuroplasticity. And we will look at it not as a scientific lesson, but as a map for understanding why we get stuck and how we can, very slowly and kindly, begin to move forward. It creates a fascinating curiosity loop, doesn't it, to consider that the reason change feels so hard is actually because your brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do, and that the secret to lasting transformation isn't about force, but about a quiet kind of repetition that most of us overlook. Throughout our time together, I want to gently dismantle the idea that you are broken or that you have failed because you haven't seen immediate results, and instead, I want to offer you a different perspective, one that sees your brain as a landscape that is constantly reshaping itself, responding not to your demands, but to your daily life. It is widely understood by those who study the mind that our thoughts, actions, and feelings are not set in stone like a statue, but are more like paths worn into a grassy field, paths that can be deepened or overgrown depending on where we choose to walk. This idea that the brain is plastic, meaning malleable, changeable, and adaptable, is perhaps the most hopeful discovery of our time, because it suggests that no matter how long you have felt stuck, the potential for a new path is always physically present within you. Imagine for a moment a dense forest where you have walked the same trail every single day for 10, 20, or 30 years, and because you have walked it so often, the ground is smooth, the branches are cleared, and you can walk it without even thinking, perhaps even with your eyes closed. This is what a habit, a thought pattern, or a deeply held belief is like in the brain. It is an efficient, well-traveled highway that your mind prefers because it requires almost no energy to use. When we decide we want to change, whether that means reacting more calmly to stress, building a new creative habit, or simply being kinder to ourselves, we are essentially stepping off that clear path and trying to walk through the thick, overgrown brush where no path exists yet. It is naturally difficult, it is scratching and slow, and your brain, which loves efficiency, will immediately urge you to get back on the easy path, the known path, because that is where it feels safe. This is the part most people misunderstand about change. They mistake this biological resistance for a personal failure, thinking, I am just not strong enough, when in reality, they are simply experiencing the friction of blazing a new trail. It is important to pause here and really let that sink in, because if you can recognize that the difficulty is just biology rather than a lack of character, you can stop blaming yourself for the struggle. Many experts have observed that the brain is an energy-conserving organ, always looking for the path of least resistance, which explains why we might have a burst of motivation on Monday but find ourselves slipping back into old comforts by Wednesday. It is not that you don't want to change. It is that your brain is prioritizing what is familiar, even if what is familiar makes you unhappy. This brings us to a crucial realization that often gets overlooked in the noise of motivational speeches and quick-fix promises, which is that true neuroplasticity, the actual rewiring of these pathways, does not happen through intensity, but through consistency. We often think that if we just push hard enough, if we just force ourselves to be different for a week, the change will stick, but the brain does not learn that way. It learns through the gentle, boring, unglamorous act of repetition over time. Just as walking through the tall grass once does not make a path, doing something new once or twice does not rewire the brain. The grass springs back up, and the trace disappears. To create a lasting change, we have to be willing to walk that new, difficult path again and again, even when it feels like we aren't getting anywhere, and even when the old highway looks so inviting. Many people notice that this is the phase where they tend to give up, the messy middle where the new behavior feels unnatural and exhausting, and the old behavior still feels automatic. But this discomfort is actually the evidence that the work is happening. It is the feeling of the brain physically wrestling with its own structure, trying to connect new dots and bridge new gaps. There is a saying often used in these circles that neurons that fire together wire together, which is just a simple way of saying that whatever we give our attention to grows. If we spend our days worrying, we are strengthening the neural connections for worry, making it easier and faster for our brains to access that state in the future. Conversely, if we practice a moment of gratitude or a moment of pause before reacting, however small and imperfect that practice may be, we are laying down a faint new thread of connection that will eventually, with enough repetition, become a sturdy rope. This is why smallness is so powerful and why grand, dramatic overhauls often fail. When we try to change everything at once, we trigger the brain's alarm system, sending us retreating back to safety. But when we make a change so small that it almost feels insignificant, we can slip past that resistance. It is often felt that the most profound changes in life start with shifts that are barely visible to the outside world. A deep breath instead of a snap judgment, a glass of water instead of a sugary drink, a gentle thought instead of a harsh criticism. These tiny repetitions are the language the brain understands. As we continue to explore this, I want to gently acknowledge the frustration that comes with time, because we live in a world that promises instant transformation, causing us to feel like we are lagging behind if we aren't completely different people within 30 days. But neuroplasticity is a biological process, much like growing a garden. You cannot yell at a seed to make it grow faster, and you cannot force your brain to rewire itself overnight. Research often suggests that depending on the complexity of the habit, it can take months of repetition before a new behavior starts to feel automatic. And during that time, it is completely normal to feel like you are faking it. You might feel like you are just acting the part of a calm person, or acting the part of a disciplined person, but that acting is the rehearsal your brain needs to learn the script. There is a quiet beauty in accepting this slowness, in giving ourselves permission to be works in progress for much longer than we would like. Some people experience a sense of grief when they realize how deeply ingrained their old patterns are, perhaps realizing that they have spent decades reinforcing habits that don't serve them. But there is hope in knowing that the brain remains plastic throughout our entire lives. It was once believed that our brains stopped developing after childhood, but we now know that is not true. Whether you are 30, 60, or 90, your brain still holds the capacity to learn, to adapt, and to form new connections. It may take a little more conscious effort as we age, but the machinery of change is always there, waiting for us to use it. This leads us to a subtle but profound shift in how we view our slip-ups, because if change is about wearing down a new path, then stepping off the path occasionally doesn't ruin the whole journey. Many of us have a perfectionist streak that says, "I missed a day, so I failed." Or, I got angry again, so I haven't learned anything. But looking at it through the lens of neuroplasticity tells a different story. If you are hiking and you stumble off the trail for a moment, you don't turn around and go all the way back to the start. You simply step back onto the trail and keep walking. Every time you catch yourself slipping into an old habit and gently guide yourself back to the new one, you are actually strengthening the new pathway even more than if you had been perfect. Because the act of noticing and correcting is a powerful signal to the brain that says, "This is important, pay attention here." It is widely felt that self-compassion is not just a nice idea, but a functional tool for neuroplasticity. Because shame and self-criticism tend to keep us stuck in our old, stress-based loops, whereas kindness creates the safety needed for the brain to try something new. So, if you find yourself back on the old highway today, be gentle. Simply notice it, acknowledge that it's a well-worn path for a reason, and then, without drama, take one small step toward the new direction. This is the part that often gets overlooked, that the only way to truly change is to fall in love with the process of returning, over and over again, to the intention you have set. It is about becoming a person who doesn't give up when things get messy. As we begin to close this reflection, I want you to consider that the life you want to live is not somewhere far away in the distance, but is being built right now in this very moment by the thoughts you are thinking and the small choices you are making. It is easy to underestimate the power of a single moment, but your brain is always listening, always recording, always adapting. You are the architect of your own experience, not through force of will, but through the gentle, persistent shaping of your own mind. It is a slow process, yes, and it is often invisible for a long time, just as a river carves a canyon over thousands of years, imperceptible in the daily view but undeniable in the long run. Many people find that one day, after months of quiet effort, they look up and realize that the new reaction has become the automatic one, that the new habit has become the path of least resistance, and that they have, in fact, changed their life without ever having to force it. It happened because they showed up, again and again, with patience and understanding. So, as you move forward from here, I hope you can carry this sense of reassurance with you, that you are not stuck, you are simply in the process of building a new path. Trust the biology of your own body, trust the time it takes, and know that every small, positive repetition is a victory that is physically changing the structure of who you are. The only way to truly change is to keep walking, one step at a time, with great love for the journey. Thank you so much for spending this time with me, exploring the quiet and hopeful science of how we grow. If this reflection resonated with you, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe to share in more of these conversations. Thanks for being here and take good care.